She clocked out at 1:48 a.m. 12 hours and 40 minutes, 2 codes, 1 family she'd had to sit with for longer than she had time to sit with them, and the particular exhaustion that wasn't physical so much as a slow draining of whatever part of her processed other people's suffering and converted it into something she could work with. She changed out of her scrubs in the locker room. She drank the last of a coffee that had been bad 4 hours ago and was worse now. She said goodnight to the charge nurse and walked to her car in the parking structure and sat in it for a moment before starting it. Home was 90 minutes. She'd done it 100 times. She pulled out of the structure at 1:56 a.m. and found the highway entrance and settled into the left lane and let the drive take over. She noticed the first one at mile marker 47. Or rather, she noticed mile marker 47, and then 12 minutes later noticed mile marker 51, and then noticed 54, and then 58, and then 61, and understood that something was off but couldn't locate what. The increments were wrong. Not dramatically, not impossible, just slightly irregular. The kind of thing you'd attribute to inattention if you weren't a person who paid attention for a living. She started watching the markers more carefully. 58 again. She slowed slightly, checked her mirrors. The road behind her was empty. The road ahead was empty. The highway at 2 a.m. was hers entirely, just the headlights and the road surface and the signs at their intervals. 63. Then 67, then 64, then 71. She was not miscounting. She was not tired in the way that caused miscounting. She knew that kind of tired, had learned to identify it the way you learn to identify your own symptoms, and this wasn't it. Her mind was clear. The numbers were wrong. She checked her GPS. The blue dot sat on the highway exactly where she should be, moving at her speed, the route line stretching ahead of her toward home. Estimated arrival, 3:28 a.m. She noted the time on her dashboard, 2:14 a.m. That was right. That was a normal number for where she should be on this drive. She drove. 58 again. At 3:06 a.m., her GPS still said 22 minutes from home. She had been driving for over an hour since it said 22 minutes. She had watched it update. The number changed, flickered between estimates, responded to her speed changes the way it always did. When she slowed, it adjusted the arrival time upward. When she sped up, it adjusted down. The map was moving. The dot was moving. The little animated line of her route was behaving exactly as it should. It had said 20 minutes, or 22, or 19, for the last hour and 15 minutes. She pressed the home button and let the GPS reroute. It thought for a moment, and then displayed the same route she was already on, and said 21 minutes. She turned it off. She turned it back on. 20 minutes. She drove past mile marker 71, then 63, then 79, then 71 again. She called her husband. He picked up on the second ring. Hey. No grogginess, no fumbling, just his voice, alert, as if he'd been waiting. She said, I'm still on the highway. Something's wrong with the drive home. He said, pull over, take a break, you're tired. She said, I'm not tired. I've been driving for 4 hours. I should have been home an hour ago. He said, 4 hours? She said, what time is it there? A pause. Just past 1. She looked at her dashboard. 3:19 a.m. She said, your phone, check your phone. Another pause. 1:17, he said. Sarah, pull over. She said, our clocks are 2 hours apart. He said, you're exhausted. It happens. Just pull over, take 20 minutes, and She said, "David, how are you this awake?" He didn't answer immediately. When he spoke again, his voice was the same, exactly the same warmth, the same cadence she'd been listening to for 11 years. But something behind it had changed, or she was only now hearing something that had been there from the beginning. He said, "Come home. Just come home." She said, "I'm trying." He said, "I know. I can see you're trying." She said, "What do you mean you can?" He said, "Mile marker 71. She looked up. The sign passed in her headlights, white numbers on green. 71. She said, "David, how did you know that?" The call was silent, not dropped. She could see it was still connected, the timer counting, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5. She said his name. She said it again. He said, "Come inside." The call dropped. She drove. There wasn't a decision to make, or she made it without noticing. She wasn't going to pull over on an empty highway at 3 a.m. after whatever that phone call had been, and she wasn't going to stop moving. And the only direction that made sense was forward. She put the phone face down on the passenger seat and gripped the wheel with both hands and drove. The mile markers continued their private arithmetic. 71 again, then 84, then 77, then 91, then 71. The number 71 appeared more than any other, she noticed. Not every time, not in any pattern she could predict, but more. Like a word repeated until it stopped meaning anything, or started meaning something else. She turned the radio on, found a station, left it. The GPS said 17 minutes from home, and she watched it, and it stayed at 17 for 20 minutes, and then dropped to 15. And she felt something loosen in her chest. There. It's moving. It's actually moving now. And then it went back to 17. She passed a rest stop and didn't take it. She passed an exit for a town she didn't know and didn't take it. She thought about the call, the way he'd sounded, right and wrong simultaneously, like a copy that had been made carefully but from imperfect information. She thought about, "I can see you're trying." She thought about the way he'd said, "Come inside," at the very end. Not "come home." Inside, as if he were already standing at the door. Mile marker 71. She turned the radio up. At 4:17 a.m., the exit sign appeared. She saw it from a distance. The green of it, the reflective white letters, her exit number in the upper right corner. She watched it as she approached. It stayed. It didn't flicker or change or disappear as she got closer. It was just a sign, just her exit, exactly where an exit sign should be. She took it. The ramp curved down in the way it always curved. The surface road at the bottom. The red light. She sat at it with both hands flat on the wheel and breathed. The light turned green. She drove. She observed everything. The gas station on the corner of Route 9 and Millbrook. Present. Lit. The sign with the missing letter in premium that had been missing for 2 years. The railroad bridge with the painted-over graffiti, the shape of letters still visible under the grey. The turn onto Sycamore. The slight jostle of the uneven drainage patch exactly where her body expected it. She drove slowly and checked everything against her internal map, and everything agreed. The streets were her streets. The dark houses were her neighbours' houses. The oak that had grown into the utility line and leaned slightly over the pavement. Correct. All of it correct. She turned onto her street. The house looked right. The shape of it, the porch, the light her husband always left on when she worked late. His car in the driveway, slightly crooked the way he parked when he was tired. She sat with the engine running and thought about calling him, watching the light in the window as the phone rang, seeing if a shadow moved. She turned the engine off. She walked up the front path and climbed the porch steps and put her hand on the railing and looked at the house number beside the door. Her address was 74. 74. 11 years. Written on forms without thinking. The number on the door was 71. Same brushed nickel digits her husband had put up the first summer. Same spacing, same height on the frame. The number 71, in the same style, in the same place. Not worn or damaged or ambiguous in any light. From inside, beneath the low sound of the television, she heard his voice. Come inside. The same 2 words. The same cadence as the phone. The same tone that wasn't raised but reached her clearly. The voice she'd been listening to for 11 years, saying the wrong thing in exactly the right way. She was moving before she'd decided to move. Down the steps, across the path, back to her car. She didn't run. She got in. She locked the doors. She started the engine and did not look at the front door, and backed out of the driveway and drove. The streets were wrong. The gas station on Route 9 had the missing letter in a different word. The railroad bridge had no graffiti, no ghost of letters, just concrete. The drainage dip on Sycamore came 50 yards too early. Everything close. Everything almost right. Like someone had reconstructed her neighborhood from careful notes taken by someone who had been paying attention but not quite enough. Who had the names right, the broad shapes right, but didn't know exactly where the road dipped or which word was missing a letter, or which way the oak tree leaned. She drove through it and said nothing. Her phone lit up on the passenger seat. David. She watched it ring. She knew it might be him, the real him, awake, her side of the bed empty, calling to find out where she was. She knew that was possible. She let it ring. The screen went dark and she turned onto Route 9 and found the on-ramp, and the highway opened up ahead of her. The GPS said 20 minutes from home. Mile marker 58, then 63, then 71. The markers moved in their wrong system, and the road was empty, and the radio played something without words, and she drove. She thought about the exit sign, whether it had been real. Whether the ramp and the surface road and the gas station and the driveway and the porch and the number on the door had been one continuous, wrong thing, or whether there was a real exit somewhere ahead of her still, waiting, and she hadn't reached it yet. She didn't know. She couldn't know. Her phone lit up again. David. She watched it in her peripheral and let it ring, and when it stopped, she put both hands on the wheel and kept her eyes forward. The highway was empty. The mile markers counted in their private language. The GPS said 20 minutes, and she drove toward it anyway, because the only other option was to stop. And stopping meant being still, and being still meant listening. And she wasn't ready to hear what the highway sounded like when she wasn't moving through it. She turned the radio up. She passed mile marker 71. She drove. Somewhere ahead of her there was an exit. Real or not. Hers or not. She would reach it or she wouldn't. And she would find out or she wouldn't. And until then, there was only the road and the markers and the dark on either side and the white lines moving under her and the engine turning over steadily beneath her and the 20 minutes that never became 19. She drove. She kept driving.